are Confessional Magazine, and this is More to the Story, brought to you today by Iris and Bo, whose toner helps keep my laugh lines in check, because you never know what our guests are going to say. Visit irisandbo.com today and use code CONFESSIONAL for 20% off.
So much love in this heart of mine.
I'm Taylor. This is Confessional Magazine, and I'm here today with someone that I'm so excited to share with you. His name is Stratos. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Stratos is an amazing composer, saxophone player. That he really does it all, and he has an amazing record coming out on October 1st that I am so stoked to just get into and talk about, and it's called Planets. But before we get into that, I just want to start back at the beginning. So Stratos, when did you first get into the music world?
Yeah, so I started playing saxophone in elementary school. I think it's quite normal for most kids to start, where I'm from, most kids to start in 5th grade. Everyone got to pick their instruments. They originally wanted me to play violin, but I just wholeheartedly, decided not. I've wanted to be a saxophone player as long as I can remember. So I kind of went in when we get to the flute, saxophone, clarinet, I'm gonna, try to suck at the flute and the clarinet and be good at the saxophone. So I started when I was 10 years old, and I've just been in bands and ensembles ever since then. And I started playing jazz, pretty much immediately. I think the first person I ever heard play the saxophone, I think, was Sonny Rollins. I was very young. I think I was maybe 7 or 8. So I kind of knew that jazz saxophone was going to be my thing. So I've been playing jazz saxophone for quite some time. So that's my girlfriend. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I was in a lot of jazz ensembles there. I traveled to Detroit frequently to play in some of the student ensembles there. And I've just been playing ever since. I started composing, I think, my sophomore year in college. I went to Western Michigan University for jazz. Started writing pretty much then. And then when I graduated from my undergrad, I started messing around with production a little bit. And after I graduated from my master's, also from Western, I started film photography. So everything's kind of just been, building up from there. So
amazing. And so what can you tell us about your last EP that you put out?
Yeah, so my last EP I released on the same day as this record, on October 1st, my birthday. It was called Die. And I released it basically pretty much, the pandemic happened right as I graduated from my master's. So, right as it was time for me to, start my career, I was like, okay, well, now there's nothing to do. So I basically just sat in my house all day and worked on this record. I was kind of learning as I went. I just started production, and I was like, okay, let me just put out this track on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And by the end of the summer, I had enough for an EP. And kind of the record focuses a lot on isolation, as I think a lot of things did. But it kind of has a lot of different elements. There's a lot of maybe happy sounding things, or more uplifting things, because I don't know, that's just kind of who I am. I'm very in my own head. And even though the pandemic was happening, I was still well, at least I get to still make music. So that was kind of reflected in the record. It's kind of an experiment. So I only put it on Bandcamp, and was able to get a really supportive community going on Bandcamp, and basically sort of training myself for my next release, Planets, which is going to be available everywhere.
Yes, and so let's get into Planets. You sent me a link. I was able to listen to it already, and I was seriously sitting there in a trance. in it. Okay, so you walk through actual planets throughout this record. Each song is Mercury, Venus, Earth, and you actually like walk out, and I felt like I was in science class almost. Like
Yeah.
there was some way you were able to like translate music in such a beautiful way that you felt like you were actually like walking along these planets. How much research went into planets? It had to, like, I just can't even imagine.
Yeah, I didn't do like too much research because I wanted it to be so I'll start a little before. So there is a famous interpretation of the planet. The composer Gustav Holst has the 7 movement suites called The Planet. And it does every planet, I think, except for Earth and maybe Pluto, because I don't think Pluto was a planet yet. I'm ironic because now it's not anymore. So I sort of like went in kind of wanting to do like the opposite of that, where his planets are, like I think his planets like very much like embody the planets, as we know them. But with me, I kind of wanted to sort of like flip the script. So like each tune not necessarily like embodies the planet, but embodies maybe, like an idea. So like, for example, Neptune is sort of like very eerie and like isolated. And Pluto, for example, so Pluto is included on the record, even though it's not a planet. I included Pluto because it's an elegy, so a song written for someone who's passed away to the person who gave me my saxophone. I was able to get my saxophone from it was gifted to me by an older gentleman, and he passed away shortly after he gave it to me. So Pluto, even though it's, not a planet, it's sort of like, tied to this person isn't here anymore, and neither is the planet. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about your story of who gave you this saxophone? That's so nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I was 19, I was in school and I was looking for a saxophone. My teacher was like, "Hey, you're sounding great and everything, but I think your current saxophone is holding you back." I had sort of an older saxophone, and I just, technically I couldn't, really do what I wanted to do. So, I didn't have very much money. My parents don't come from money and that sort of thing. So I kind of just like looked around. I was like, "Hey, people, like I'm looking for a saxophone. What can I do?" And there was this gentleman who lived in Detroit, and he had a bunch of, so they're called Selmer saxophones, Selmer Mark VI saxophones, very famous, iconic saxophones that were made from 1954 to 1974. And they're kind of like the Stradivarius of the saxophone, like very sought after. So this gentleman, he had like 9 or 10 of them just in his house. And so I knew he lived in Detroit, and I knew that there was a saxophone shop that, was looking for these saxophones. They're always looking to buy them. So I called up the saxophone shop. I was like, "Hey, I'm meeting with this guy. He's got a bunch of saxophones, and I think, if I can give him, if I can get him to like sell them, to you, I think I can maybe like get one for a reduced price, that sort of thing." So I kind of had like a little plan going in. So then I went to his house, we met, and he let me play a bunch of his saxophones, because I came in, I was like, "Hey, yeah, like, I'm gonna help you sell them," and played a bunch of his saxophones. And I, was like really trying to play and like really trying to get into them. And he looked at me when I was done, and he was like, "So which one do you like?" And I was like, I like that one, so I can, if you sell it to me for a reduced price, I can, get the rest of them sold for you. And he's like, "Well, just keep playing, keep playing the saxophones, and we'll see." And I was like, "Okay." So I kept playing them, blah, blah, blah. And when I was done, he was like, "Well, which one?" And I was like, "I really like that one." And he's like, "It's yours." And I was like, "What do you mean it's mine?" He was like, "Take it." And that was pretty much it. He let me have the saxophone for free. And yeah, it changed my life. So after I left, I would periodically send him recordings like, "Hey man, like this is what I'm doing. thank you so much. And we exchanged letters from then on until the day he passed. So that's, yeah.
What a beautiful story. Do you mind sharing his name with us?
Yeah, his name was Richard Lozon. He's actually, he was the grandfather of a student who, I think he was a senior when I was a freshman in high school back in Ann Arbor. So I messaged him. I was like, hey, I'm going to see your granddad, and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, he was kind of just connected in the Detroit suburban community.
What a beautiful thing. And that, isn't that just like such like the marker of like the pure beauty of music?
Yeah. And
music can really connect people and like pull out, like, it's just, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, for the saxophone, I've decided that whoever gets it next, it has to be given to that person for free. So like, if when it's time for me to go, my only requirement for whoever gets it is that they have to give it away. So that's kind of what.
Pay it forward.
Yeah, exactly.
That's beautiful. So let's get into planets. So yeah. I want to talk about Earth, because we're here now, and that was, I have it written down, but you were with, was it Herb Albert Young?
Herb Albert.
Herb Albert, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he I'm a winner of his Young Jazz Composer Award.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you won that multiple times?
Yeah, so the first time I won was let's see, 2019, and then 2020, and then this year was the last time I won.
And that's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about his legacy?
Yeah, so Herb Alpert is a trumpet player, or was a trumpet player and composer, and he has this award. He's very, very prolific, very successful, and he has this award that basically, very competitive award. I think it's national. I don't think it's international. That is a part of the ASCAP Foundation. And so basically every year they choose, I think it's around like 20 or 30 young composers. No, it's less than that. I think it's like 10 or 15 composers under the age of 30 who win this award. And some of my friends have also won. And it's like incredibly, like everyone who wins is just incredibly skilled composer. They feature our music along with the winnings, and I always check out like who's also won, and it's mind blowing, and I feel like so lucky to even be like in the same sentence as
absolutely. So, and then so working on this Planets album, you're stepping through all of these, like literally you're going from planet to planet throughout the record, and when we get to Earth, you are on there with Santino Jones.
Yeah.
So, and there was a quote when I was listening to it, and I was like, man, like, say it for the people in the back. Like,
right.
But it was never realizing we're all brothers in the end.
Yeah.
And that was just like, this is Earth. That, like, I got chills, like, to my core through that, because that is just such, you're putting out the message, and that, like, you feel it before he even says it.
I'm glad you think that. So Santino he's I actually haven't met him in person yet. He's a young rapper based here in Kalamazoo, and I got to work with him on a little project prior to Planets, and I just like really loved his style and his lyrics and everything. And I asked him to be on this. He said, yeah. And for this track, I gave him a prompt. I wanted him to rap as if he was like, an alien who was observing Earth, and someone from an outside perspective. So he's really talking about how strange it is that we have such a disparity in wealth, and how strange it is that we're fighting each other and that sort of thing. and I wanted to use like natural sounding, organic, earthly instruments for this one. So I had my friend Alex Mansour, who's an incredible pianist, play. He didn't play for this track, but he sent me just like, I think like 5 minutes of him just playing. It's, he's such an incredible pianist, and so I chopped it up a little bit. And so I wanted to use like organic sounding instruments to really sort of like bring it back to this this planetary space for that track. So that's kind of where my head was at.
Yeah, and I mean, you nailed it through it. Like I said, I felt like I was like entranced in this, and like I could see it being used, and I don't know your brain or where you're at, but I could honestly see this being like in one of those like halls where you walk in and there's students and they're just talking about the planets, and like a planetarium or something, that
Right.
like this is, you're going through the planets and you're seeing the different stages and images, but your sound is behind it, and you're just walking through the universe, and it really, to your core, you nailed and encapsulated the whole thing in a way that isn't just like, this is Earth, that's Venus, that's Mars, but it was like as a whole, like
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad you think so. Yeah, that was something that I was really like struggling with. Like, how do I? So I think another thing about the record is that I'm sort of using. I have a lot of different musical interests, and a lot of them are very like opposite. So the struggle for me was, how do I include all these things but have like a narrative through line? So I'm deciding which instruments to use that connect it. What vibe to make things, and like who do I have on it to make it sort of connected. So yeah, I'm really glad that came across.
Yeah, it absolutely does. You can feel it, and I'm so excited for people to be able to listen to this. So can you share with me now, to anyone that's listening or watching or reading this, how can we find this on October 1st?
Yeah, so on October 1st, the album goes live. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Google Play, like all of the streaming services. And you can also support me by buying it on Bandcamp. So Bandcamp is an incredible service because for artists, like we don't really get paid by Spotify streams. It's very I think it's like, I think you have to be getting like maybe hundreds of thousands of plays to make minimum wage. So we don't really get paid that way. But Bandcamp is an incredible service because you can stream the music and buy it, and the money goes directly to us. And the interface is beautiful. They do blog write-ups and that sort of thing. So Bandcamp is an incredible way to support me. And then also the record is going to be on vinyl, so you can. I think there's only like 50 or 60 left.
Okay, well, sign me up.
I was gonna say I did. I did a.
Can I get it signed?
Yeah, I did 100 pressings, and I'm gonna number them each by hand. So that you can find, like if you go to Instagram, you can see like the shop, or you can go to my website stratostones.com, and you can see everything there. So.
Awesome. And you're at Stratos Tones on Instagram as well. So,
yep.
And that's, you can definitely hop on there and follow your journey as well.
Yeah.
I always like to ask this question because I do plan on still being around 5 years from now. So 5 years from now, where do you see yourself? Because I'm going to check back in. Where do you see yourself both personally and professionally in 5 years? Or where would you just like to be?
Yeah. I mean, I asked myself that question too a lot. So I'm moving. So I'm moving to LA next summer. Me and my girlfriend, and I think like personally and professionally, I would like to be playing with a lot of the people that I listen to now and sort of look up to now. I'm a huge fan of the the record label called Brain Feeder, which is owned by Flying Lotus. He's been a huge inspiration. So Flying Lotus is a producer, and he, I think maybe got his, I might be speaking out of my, out of my mouth, but outside of my mouth, but I think where I found him was on Adult Swim. As a young kid, watching Adult Swim, and in between the shows, they would have all these bumps, and they, I think back when he was young, they asked producers like, hey, like send us some beats, and he sent one in, and his first one premiered before, I think, the Boondocks, or something crazy. So he got, super, super infused with like hip hop, jazz, anime, like that, everything that I'm really, really involved in. So I'd love to, be involved with that label and him in some way. I'm a huge fan of a saxophone player. His name is Donnie Mccaslin. His band was actually the final band to play on David Bowie's last album.
Wow.
So it's him on saxophone, Tim LaFave on bass, Jason Lindner on keyboards, and Mark Julian on drums. So they're all like, all these people are all out in LA. So I'm hoping to just, go out there and just see what I can do. So.
Amen. And honestly, this is just the beginning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just the beginning. I'm so excited for you, and just to be able to watch your journey from the sideline is going to be very exciting. So everybody, please follow Stratos Tones on Instagram and follow the music, follow the journey. Planets is coming out on October 1st, and just share it, because there's nothing that connects people more than music. Just share it, share it, share it. So thank you so much for being here with me today, Stratos. It was so nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will talk soon. And again, October 1st, Planets comes out. Make sure you're streaming it everywhere you can. Thank you so much, Stratos.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So much love in this heart of mine.